Jon had lots of friends at school, and at university I remember going to visit him, and every single person said hello as they went past, and hi Jon, how are you? It was really lovely. I think he enjoyed university a lot. I don't know how hard he worked, but he had a good time.
At that time, Jon was a kind of very expansive character. He was just really interested in the world. He was interested in what was going on. He really wanted to experience everything. I remember he'd been to Israel, he'd been traveling. He was very into music at that time. Like I remember, down in his basement, he'd often have the kind of music playing, and he'd have friends that we'd met from going to sort of clubs or things round and listening to tracks. And so that was probably his kind of biggest passion, I would say, at that time.
This one, proper meditation. Big up Bleep Funk.
I think he will have met Graham when he lived in Hackney, and they formed a kind of shared bond over music. He was quite intense. He was like really interested in questioning what was going on, why things were going on.
His interest in Buddhism definitely made him the calm person that I think a lot of people know him as, but he wasn't always like that. I think that, especially younger, being younger especially, I've known him since our early teens, mid-teens, so everybody goes through maybe a bit of a rebellious streak.
You want to tell me something? No. Go on. Tell you what? Tell me a story. Please. Do me a story. No. Sorry? Story. Tell me one. What? Tell me one. No way.
So I remember him, even then at a young age, having quite sort of strong convictions and strong opinions. So I remember him, maybe if he'd see some like ostentatious display of wealth or something on the street, he'd get angry.
I think there's an awful lot to be gained from thinking about death and dying, both learning from other cultures, but also looking at the ways that death plays out in our society, and our attitude towards it plays out in our society. There's a significant body of research which shows that our behaviour to sort of put people in hierarchies, both in terms of class and in terms of race, is linked to our attitude towards death and dying. Similarly, our wish to consume, to obtain money and power, and our drive to do those things, it's again linked to our attitude towards death and dying. So I think, and it's my hope, that by focusing on death, we can unpick some of the unhelpful systems that we've got around those kind of things.
Jon, for a long time, talked about wanting to do some work around death and dying. I think because of his Buddhist beliefs, and I believe that Buddhists contemplate death every day. So he thought for a long time about what he wanted to do, and the Death Cafe itself came about because Alistair, my husband, found a cutting in the Independent, cut it out, posted it to Jon about Bernard Crittaz and the Café Motel that Bernard Crittaz was doing. And Jon was extremely interested in that idea and decided to call it Death Cafe, and thought about what he wanted to do and realised having people meet together to talk about death and dying was what he wanted to do, and that's what he did. It was downstairs in Jon's dining room. People were sat round a table. There was a coal fire burning. I think it was in September in 2011. And people really enjoyed it. But then we decided that it was better not to have such a rigid structure, and in fact nowadays there's no structure at all.
I started coming to Jamyang, I think the first time 1998, and enrolled for what was then the Foundation of Buddhist Thought programme, which began in the summer or the autumn of 1999, just after His Holiness's visit to Jamyang. And Jon enrolled on the same course, so that was a 2-year study programme, quite intensive, with Geshe Tashi Tsering, who was the sort of in-residence teacher and monk who lived in Jamyang and was the teacher for many, many years, over 20 years.
He's a very quiet man, unless if you know him very well. If you know him very well, then, we'll have a very good conversation, lots of jokes, but otherwise he won't talk that much. For example, when he comes to the classes, he always sit a little bit back, and even if he had some questions, he will let other people ask questions first, and if there are times left, then he may ask questions. So my understanding and my experience with Jon's life, he is a very, very quiet man, but very determined. If he thinks something is important to be done, he will do it. Before he started Death Cafe, he came to me many times to discuss. I was a little bit skeptical on that, how he's going to start this in cafe, who will come to the cafe to discuss about this very, some in certain extents very painful topic. But he was adamant. He said several times to me, "Okay, Shala, it will work. It will work."
It's become hugely popular. I mean, are you surprised by the fact that the idea has taken off around the world?
Yes, I mean, it is surprising, but it's really wonderful, and I think it signifies that things are changing very, very quickly.
I think his main motivation, intention to have this, Death Cafe project is to raise the awareness to the people, and then to say, initially just sharing the experiences. Somebody lost their loved ones or near to death or whatever, have a conversation in that they will familiarize the phenomena, not be too shocked when that happens. The teachings of the Buddha is very much in his heart, and so therefore also he had contributed to the center, being as a manager and also later participating in other activities.
Jon was my eldest, and then I had Matt, who is 18 months younger than Jon, and then 13 years later had Jools. Since Jon died, he apparently asked Jools if he couldn't, would she run the Death Cafe, and that's what she's done since his death. It was very hard for Donna and the children and Jools and myself and other members of the family to come to terms with. It was so shocking and so quick and so unexpected. Jon's children, Frank and Gina, have been remarkably resilient and are well-rounded, wonderful children.
I think from the very beginning he was interested in bigger questions that he wanted to find answers to, and I think he did that in his time.
that last time that I saw him, I mean, I'd just say to him, I'd say, so how are things going with death? Well, when I asked him, he'd always answer, you know, with a bit of a smile on his face.